The arrival of the spaceship called Horizon's Edge floated slowly toward the massive alien station. Inside the ship, Commander David Park stood near the airlock door. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and calm eyes. He wore his best uniform today because this was the most important day of his life. Today, humans would meet the Valari for the first time. Today, humans would ask to join the Galactic Coalition. Behind David stood Dr. Grace Kim. She was the team's xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life. She was checking her translation device again and again. She was nervous, and David could tell. "Stop checking it," David said with a small smile. "It will work fine." Grace looked up at him. "I know. I just want everything to be perfect. We only get one chance to make a first impression." David nodded. He understood. Humans had been traveling through space for only 50 years. They were new to this part of the galaxy. The Valari, on the other hand, had been in space for thousands of years. They were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the Coalition. If the Valari accepted humans, other species would follow. If the Valari rejected humans, the door to the galaxy would close. Lieutenant Mike Lee walked up to join them. He was the security officer, a serious man who rarely smiled. His job was to keep David and Grace safe. "The Valari ship is requesting we board now," he said. David took a deep breath. "Then let's not keep them waiting." The airlock door opened with a soft hiss. Cold air rushed in from the other side. David stepped through first, followed by Grace and Mike. They walked down a long metal hallway and entered a large chamber. The room was beautiful in a strange way. The walls were made of polished black stone that reflected light like mirrors. The ceiling was high, and strange blue lights floated in the air without any visible source. But David barely noticed any of this. His eyes were fixed on the aliens waiting for them. The Valari were tall, very tall. The shortest one was at least 7 feet, and the tallest was closer to 8. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that looked like armor. The shells shifted colors as they moved, going from deep purple to black and back again. They had 4 arms each, and their hands ended in sharp points that looked like they could cut through steel. Their faces had no noses or mouths that David could see. Instead, they had complex mandibles that clicked and moved when they spoke. Their eyes were large and made of many small parts, like the eyes of insects. The leader of the Valari group stepped forward. The translator device in David's ear turned the clicking sounds into words. "I am Ambassador Thrix," the alien said. "I speak for the Valari people." "You are the humans?" "I am Commander David Park," David replied. "I speak for Earth and all human colonies. Thank you for meeting with us." Thrix walked slowly around David. He moved like a predator examining prey. His many eyes looked at every part of David's body. David stood still and let him look. He knew this was some kind of test. "Interesting," Thrix said. "Very interesting. We had received reports about your species, but I did not fully believe them until now." "What reports?" Grace asked. Thrix made a sound that the translator turned into laughter. It was not a friendly laugh. "Reports that humans are soft," Thrix said. He reached out with one of his sharp hands and pressed the point against David's arm. He did not break the skin, but David could feel the pressure. "Reports that humans have no natural armor, no hard shell, no protective covering at all." David did not move or show fear. "That is correct." More laughter came from the other Valari in the room. "They found this very funny. How does your species survive?" Thrix asked. He seemed genuinely confused. "Your young must die constantly. A fall, a cut, a bite from any creature. These things would kill a being with no protection." "We are careful," David said simply. "Careful?" A younger Valari stepped forward. He was smaller than Thrix, but still much larger than any human. Careful is not a survival strategy. Careful is what prey animals say before they are eaten. The young Valari reached out and grabbed David's hand. He squeezed gently, and David felt pain shoot through his fingers. The alien was barely trying, yet David knew his bones could break easily. "So soft," the young Valari said with disgust. "I could tear through this skin without effort. I could break these bones like dry sticks. How can the Coalition trust such a weak species? How can we send humans into conflict? Into dangerous work? You would die from injuries that we would not even notice." Mike stepped forward, his hand moving toward his weapon. David raised his other hand to stop him. "We are not as weak as we appear," David said calmly. Thrix made the laughing sound again. "That is what all weak species say. But the facts are clear, Commander. Your bodies have no defense. Your skin can be cut by a child's toy. Your bones can be broken by a simple fall. You have no venom, no claws. No natural weapons of any kind." He leaned closer to David. His breath smelled like metal and chemicals. "The Coalition has survived for 10,000 years because we accept only the strong. The Valari have our shells. The Krithoks have their acid blood. The Morvani can survive in the vacuum of space itself. What do humans have?" David looked directly into Thrix's strange eyes. "We have something none of you have ever seen before. Something you cannot understand by looking at us." "And what is that?" David smiled. It was a confident smile that confused the aliens. "You will see, Ambassador. In time, you will see." Thrix pulled back. He seemed annoyed by David's confidence. "We shall continue with the tour of our station," Thrix said. "Perhaps after you see what true strength looks like, you will understand why your application to join the Coalition is unlikely to succeed." The Valari turned and began walking toward a large door at the far end of the chamber. David, Grace, and Mike followed. Grace moved close to David and whispered, "That went badly." "Not yet," David whispered back. "The day is not over." Mike looked at both of them. "What are you planning, Commander?" David shook his head. "Nothing. But I know my species. I know what we can do. And I know that before this visit ends, they will see it too." They walked into the alien station, surrounded by creatures who thought they were weak. David kept his head high. He was not worried. He was human. And humans always found a way to surprise the universe. The tour of the Valari station, continued for 2 hours. Ambassador Thrix led the humans through corridor after corridor, showing them the power of his species. They saw massive ships being built by thousands of Valari workers. They saw weapons that could destroy entire planets. They saw armor that could stop any attack known to the galaxy. And at every stop, Thrix made sure to point out how weak humans were. "This is our standard combat suit," Thrix said, showing them a massive set of powered armor. "It weighs 3,000 Earth pounds. A Valari can wear it for days without rest. A human would be crushed under its weight." "This is our basic worker's tool," Thrix said at another stop, holding up a device that looked like a giant drill. "It requires 4 hands to operate. Humans have only 2 hands. You could never use our equipment." Again and again, the message was the same. Humans were too small, too weak, too soft, too limited. The Coalition had no place for them. Mike walked beside David, his face tight with anger. "They're trying to break us," he said quietly. "They want us to give up and go home." "I know," David replied. "Don't let them see your frustration. That's what they want." Grace was walking behind them, recording everything with a small device. She was a scientist, and even insults could not stop her from studying these amazing aliens. But David could see that she was also getting tired of the disrespect. Finally, Thrix led them to the industrial sector of the station. This was where the Valari processed raw materials from asteroids and moons. The chamber was enormous, bigger than any building David had ever seen on Earth. Machines the size of skyscrapers moved tons of rock and metal. Furnaces burned so hot that the air itself seemed to shake. Sparks flew everywhere like tiny stars. The noise was incredible. David could barely hear himself think. The heat was so intense that he started sweating immediately. He noticed that the Valari were not affected at all. Their hard shells protected them from everything. "This is where we make the coalition strong," Thrix shouted over the noise. "Our workers process materials that would kill other species. The heat alone would boil a human from the inside." David wiped sweat from his face but said nothing. They walked along a metal platform high above the factory floor. Below them, hundreds of Valari workers operated massive machines. David noticed that some of the workers were smaller than others. Children, he realized. The Valari put their children to work in this dangerous place because their shells protected them. Then, David saw something that made his heart stop. One of the young Valari workers was standing beneath a huge metal beam. The beam was part of a crane system that moved materials across the factory. But something was wrong. David could see that one of the supports was bent. It was rusted and weak, and it was about to break. "Look out!" David screamed, but the noise was too loud. The young Valari could not hear him. Time seemed to slow down. David saw the support beam snap. He saw the huge metal arms start to fall. He saw the young Valari finally look up, eyes wide with fear. But it was too late. The child could not move fast enough. The beam was going to crush him. David did not think. He did not consider the danger. He did not remember that he was soft and weak and breakable. He simply acted. He ran to the edge of the platform and jumped. He fell 20 feet and hit the ground hard. Pain shot through his legs, but he ignored it. He ran toward the young Valari as fast as his legs could carry him. The beam was falling, falling, falling. He had less than a second. David slammed into the young Valari with all his strength. He pushed the child out of the way, sending him rolling across the factory floor. But David himself could not escape in time. The beam caught him across the back. The jagged metal edge cut through his uniform like paper. It sliced deep into his flesh, tearing through skin and muscle. David screamed in pain as he fell to the ground. Blood-red human blood poured from the wound and pooled beneath him. Then there was silence. The machines stopped. The workers stopped. Everyone stared at the human lying in a spraying pool of his own blood. Thrix rushed down from the platform. His forelegs carried him faster than any human could run. He reached David in seconds and looked down at him with something like shock on his alien face. "He's leaking," Thrix said. His voice was quiet, almost frightened. "His internal fluids are coming out." Other Valari gathered around. They had never seen anything like this before. Their shells did not allow blood to escape. When a Valari was damaged, the injury stayed contained inside their armor. But humans were different. Humans bled. Grace pushed through the crowd and dropped to her knees beside David. Her medkit was already open. "Move back," she shouted. "Give me room to work." She examined the wound quickly. It was bad, very bad. The cut was deep and long, running from David's shoulder blade to his lower back. She could see muscle tissue and even a glimpse of white bone. "How is he?" Mike asked, kneeling on David's other side. "The wound is deep but clean," Grace said. "No organs damaged, but he's losing blood fast." She began applying biofoam to stop the bleeding. The white foam filled the wound and hardened quickly, sealing the torn flesh. Then she covered it with synthetic skin, a temporary bandage that would hold everything together. "He will die," Thrick said. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. Damage like this is fatal. I have seen it before. When flesh is torn so badly, there is no recovery. Grace looked up at him. You don't know humans, Ambassador. David groaned. His eyes were open, and he was looking at Grace. Help me sit up, he said through clenched teeth. Commander. You should stay still. Help me sit up. Grace and Mike carefully lifted David into a sitting position. The movement caused fresh pain to explode through his back, but he forced himself not to scream. He took several deep breaths, then looked at Thrix. I'm not dying today, Ambassador. Thrix stared at him. You cannot know that. Your body is broken. Your fluids are outside your body. The wound will become infected. The damage will spread. You will weaken and die. This is how soft creatures end. David managed to smile despite the pain. Watch me. The young Valari that David had saved pushed through the crowd. He was shaking, his shell clicking with fear and confusion. He looked at David, then at the blood on the ground, then back at David. You saved me, the young one said. You pushed me away, but you are soft. You knew you would be hurt. Why would you do this? David looked at the young alien. Because you needed help. That's what humans do. The young Valari did not seem to understand. Neither did any of the adults watching. They had never seen anyone sacrifice their own body to save a stranger. It did not make sense to them. Ix ordered his workers to bring a medical transport. David was lifted carefully onto a floating stretcher and taken toward the medical bay. As they moved through the station, Valari workers stopped to watch. Word was spreading fast. A human had bled for a Valari child. A soft creature had broken himself to save someone from another species. And somehow, impossibly, the human was still alive. Mike walked beside the stretcher, his hand resting on David's arm. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen, he said quietly. David closed his eyes. The pain was getting worse, but he refused to show it. Maybe both, he whispered. But now they're paying attention. Now they'll watch. And soon they'll understand what humans really are. The stretcher carried him deeper into the alien station. Behind him, a pool of red blood remained on the factory floor, proof that humans were willing to bleed for what they believed in. The vigil, the humans were given a small room in the medical section of the station. It was not designed for human bodies. The bed was too hard, the air was too cold, and the lights were too bright. But Grace did her best to make David comfortable. The first night was difficult. David drifted in and out of sleep, his body fighting against the pain. Grace stayed beside him the entire time, changing his bandages and monitoring his vital signs. Mike stood guard at the door, refusing to let anyone enter without permission. In the morning, Ambassador Thrix came to visit. He stood in the doorway, his large body barely fitting through the frame. His many eyes studied David with an expression that was hard to read. Was it curiosity, concern, or something else entirely? May I enter? Thrix asked. His voice was quieter than before, missing its earlier arrogance. David nodded. Come in, Ambassador. Thrix moved into the room carefully, as if he was afraid of breaking something. He stood at a distance and watched Grace work on David's wound. I must confess, Thrix said slowly, I have never seen anything like what you did yesterday. In all my years, no one has ever sacrificed their body for a Valari. Not even other Valari. The child needed help, David said simply. But you knew you would be hurt. You knew your soft body could not survive such an impact. Yet you acted anyway. Thrix paused. This is not logical. Grace looked up from her work. It's called bravery, Ambassador. Or maybe love. Humans protect others, even strangers. It's part of who we are. Thrix made a sound that might have been confusion. But why? What do you gain from being hurt? David thought about this for a moment. We don't do it for gain. We do it because it's right. Because every life has value. Because we want to live in a universe where people help each other. Thrix was silent for a long time. Then he asked a question that surprised everyone. May I watch the healing process? Grace blinked. Excuse me? Your species is soft. Your flesh tears and bleeds. By all logic, this human should be dying or dead. Yet he speaks. He thinks. He argues. I want to understand how this is possible. May I observe as his body repairs itself? David looked at Grace. She shrugged slightly. It might help our case, she whispered. Very well, David said. You may watch. And so began the strangest 3 days of the diplomatic mission. Thrix returned every few hours to observe David's wound. At first, he came alone. But word spread quickly through the station. Other Velari wanted to see the human who should be dead. Scientists, doctors, workers, soldiers. They all found excuses to walk past the human quarters. Some asked permission to enter. Others simply stood in the hallway and stared. Grace documented everything. She explained human biology to anyone who would listen. Human skin has 3 layers, she said, during one of Thrix's visits. When the skin is cut, the body immediately begins to repair itself. First, blood clots to stop the bleeding. Then special cells move to the wound and start building new tissue. She carefully removed David's bandage to show the wound. Thrix leaned closer, his many eyes focusing on the damaged flesh. The wound looked different than before. The edges had started to close. New pink tissue was forming where there had been only raw, torn muscle. Impossible, Thrix breathed. The cells are moving. They are building. Without any machine. Without any external help. It's called healing, David said. All humans can do it. It's built into our bodies. A Velari scientist named Crix pushed forward. But how? How does the body know what to build? How do the cells communicate? How do they know when to stop? Grace smiled. Millions of years of evolution. Our ancestors survived because they could recover from injuries. The ones who healed fastest lived long enough to have children. Over time, healing became part of our basic biology. Crix was writing frantically on a tablet. The implications are extraordinary. A self-repairing organism. No need for external medical equipment. No need for spare parts or replacement shells. That is why we have so few doctors, another Velari said. Your bodies do the work themselves. We still need doctors, Grace said. For serious injuries, diseases, and conditions our bodies can't handle alone. But yes, for most wounds, we simply wait and let our bodies fix themselves. The second day brought even more visitors. The young Velari that David had saved, his name was Trex, came to see him. The young alien sat quietly in the corner of the room, watching David with a mixture of guilt and amazement. Does it hurt? Trex asked finally. David nodded. Yes, healing is not painless. But the pain gets less every day. I am sorry, Trex said. If I had been paying attention, you would not be hurt. Don't apologize. I made a choice. I would make the same choice again. Trex did not understand. But why? You could have died. You could still die. Why would you choose pain and possible death for someone you don't even know? David thought carefully about his answer. Because that's what makes us human. We see someone in danger, and we help. We don't calculate the risk. We don't weigh the benefits. We just act. Our hearts move faster than our minds. Trex was silent for a long time. Then he said something that surprised everyone. I want to be like that. I want to help others without thinking about myself. But I don't know how. David smiled. You just have to start. Help one person, then help another. Eventually, it becomes part of who you are. On the third day, Thrix arrived with a full delegation of Valari scientists and government officials. They filled the small room, their hard shells clicking against each other as they moved. We are ready, Thrix said. Show us the wound. Grace carefully removed the bandages for what felt like the 100th time. But this time was different. This time, there were gasps. The wound had closed where there had been a deep, terrible gash. There was now only a raised line of pink new skin. The flesh had knit itself back together. The muscle beneath was whole again. The bleeding had stopped completely. 3 days, a scientist whispered. In 3 days, he has rebuilt tissue that would take us months to regrow in a medical vat. And this is normal? Thrix asked. His voice was strange, almost reverent. All humans can do this? All humans, David confirmed. Some heal faster than others. Some wounds take longer than this. But yes, we all heal. It's part of our nature. Thrix turned to face his delegation. Do you understand what we are seeing? This species does not need our medical technology. They do not need replacement parts. They do not need months of recovery time. Their bodies rebuild themselves from the inside. He turned back to David. We called you fragile. We called you weak. We laughed at your soft skin. But we were wrong. His voice dropped lower. You are not fragile. You are renewable. Every wound heals. Every injury repairs. Your weakness is actually a strength we cannot match. David sat up slowly. The movement still caused some pain, but he could feel his body getting stronger every hour. We are not perfect, he said. We can still die. We can still be hurt beyond repair. But we keep going. We heal, we adapt, we survive. That is what humans do. That is what we have always done. Thrix nodded slowly. His earlier arrogance was completely gone. In its place was something that looked almost like respect. I believe, he said carefully, that I may have misjudged your species, Commander Park. I believe we all have. David smiled. Then perhaps we can start again. Perhaps you can learn what humans really are. The room was silent. The Valari looked at each other, then at the human who had healed himself through nothing but the power of his own body. Something had changed. The laughter had stopped, and in its place, something new was beginning to grow. The revelation 1 week had passed since the accident. David was walking now, though slowly. His back was stiff and sore, but the wound had almost completely healed. A long scar ran down his spine, a permanent reminder of what had happened. But he was alive. He was functional. And he was ready to continue the diplomatic mission. Ambassador Thrix requested a private meeting. They met in a small observation room that looked out over the stars. The view was beautiful, millions of points of light scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black cloth. David stood at the window, watching the universe spin slowly past. Thrix entered alone. He moved differently now. His steps were slower, more careful. He no longer walked like a predator. He walked like someone who had learned something important and was still thinking about it. Commander Park, Thrix said. Thank you for meeting with me. Of course, Ambassador. What can I do for you? Thrix was silent for a moment. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. I must confess something, he finally said. Something that shames me. David turned to face him. Go ahead. When we first heard about humanity, my people dismissed you completely. We studied your biology and found nothing impressive. Short lifespans. Small bodies. No natural weapons. No defensive structures. We assumed you were prey animals who had somehow stumbled into space travel by accident. And now? Thrix lowered his body, bending his legs and dropping his head toward the floor. David recognized this as a gesture of deep respect, something he had never seen a Volari do before. "Now I understand that we were fools," Thrix said. "We looked at your skin and saw weakness. We should have looked deeper. We should have seen the truth." He rose back to his full height and looked directly at David. "Your flesh is not a weakness, Commander. It is something extraordinary. It is armor that rebuilds itself. Armor that grows back stronger after every injury. Armor that adapts to whatever challenge it faces." David nodded slowly. "We call it scar tissue. The new skin that grows over a wound is actually tougher than the original." "Yes, your doctor explained this to me. She also explained many other things about your species." Thrix paused. "Things that I find hard to believe." "Like what?" Thrix began to pace slowly around the room. "She told me that humans can survive having limbs removed. That you can lose an arm or a leg and continue living. You simply build mechanical replacements." That's true. Prosthetics. We've been making them for thousands of years. She told me that your bones can break, completely snap into pieces, and they will grow back together. That you wrap them in hard material and wait for them to repair. Casts. Yes. Broken bones usually heal in about 6 weeks. Thrix stopped pacing. 6 weeks. To repair a structural support system, we would need to grow an entirely new shell section in a medical facility. It would take months, sometimes years. "We heal faster," David said simply. "She also told me." Thrix hesitated. "She told me that humans poison themselves for entertainment. That you drink toxic substances that damage your organs, and then your bodies simply repair the damage overnight." David laughed. "Alcohol. Yes, some of us drink too much. It's not our best quality. You drink poison. For fun. And you survive?" Thrix's voice was filled with wonder. "She told me that you expose yourselves to radiation just to see images of your own bones. That you cut open your bodies to repair internal damage, and then the external wounds heal on their own. X-rays and surgery. Yes, both are common." Thrix was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Softer, almost afraid. "Commander, I have been a warrior for 200 years. I have fought in 17 wars. I have seen the strongest species in the galaxy and watched them die. And I have never been afraid of any of them." He moved closer to David. "But I am afraid of humans." David frowned. "Why? We haven't threatened you." "That is exactly why I am afraid." Thrix's eyes gleamed in the starlight. "You do not need to threaten. You simply exist. And your existence changes everything we thought we knew." He gestured toward the window and the stars beyond. "We Volari built our empire carefully and slowly. We plan every action. We calculate every risk. Because when we are damaged, the damage can last for years. A broken shell means months of vulnerability. A lost limb means seasons of regrowth. We cannot afford to be reckless. We cannot afford to take chances." He turned back to David. "But you throw yourselves at the universe without fear. You take risks that would terrify any other species. You climb mountains that could kill you. You explore oceans that could crush you. You travel to planets that could poison you. And when you are hurt, when you are broken and bleeding and dying, you simply heal and try again." David said nothing. He let Thrix continue. "Your species is not fragile, Commander. Your species is relentless. You do not conquer the universe through strength or speed or intelligence. You conquer it through persistence. Through the simple, terrifying fact that you never stop coming back." Thrix's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I have reviewed your species' history. You have survived ice ages that killed countless other creatures. You have survived diseases that wiped out millions of your own people, and then you developed immunity. You have survived wars that destroyed cities and nations, and then you rebuilt everything larger than before. You have been beaten and burned and broken for 1,000,000 years, and you are still here. Still growing. Still spreading. He stepped back. We called you weak because we did not understand. But now I see the truth. You are not weak. You are water-soft and yielding, but impossible to stop. You flow around obstacles. You fill every space. You wear down mountains through patience alone. And when someone tries to hold you back, you simply find another way forward. David felt something warm in his chest. Pride, perhaps. Or hope. Ambassador, he said quietly, we don't want to conquer anyone. We just want to be part of something larger. To explore. To learn. To meet new friends among the stars. Thrix nodded slowly. I believe you. And that is perhaps the most frightening thing of all. You have the most dangerous trait in the universe. The ability to heal from anything, and you want only peace. You could be predators. You could be conquerors. But instead, you reach out your soft, breakable hands and offer friendship. He made a sound that might have been a sigh. The coalition has survived for 10,000 years by rejecting the weak and embracing the strong. But we were measuring strength incorrectly. We looked at armor and weapons and size. We should have looked at spirit, at determination, at the will to survive and grow and help others. He straightened to his full height. Commander David Park, I will speak to the Coalition Assembly. I will tell them what I have seen and what I have learned. I cannot promise they will accept humanity, but I can promise they will listen. David extended his hand. It was an earth gesture, but Thrix had clearly studied human customs. He reached out with one of his 4 hands and carefully grasped David's fingers. Thank you, Ambassador. No, Commander. Thank you. For jumping off that platform. For bleeding for a child you did not know. For healing when we expected you to die. His grip tightened slightly. You have shown me that strength comes in many forms. And sometimes the strongest beings in the universe are the ones who look the weakest. They released hands. The stars spun slowly outside the window, indifferent to the small moment of understanding happening within. But David knew that something had changed. Something important. The first barrier had fallen. The first mind had opened. The first laugh had turned to respect. Now came the hard part, convincing the rest of the galaxy. The Alliance, the Coalition Assembly Hall, was the largest room David had ever seen. It was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, with walls that stretched up for miles and a ceiling that glittered with artificial stars. Seats rose in great circles around a central platform, and each section held representatives from a different species. David counted 17 different groups as he walked toward the platform. Some were huge, massive creatures of stone and metal that barely fit in their seats. Some were tiny swarms of glowing insects that spoke as one voice. Some had bodies like liquid, shifting and flowing. Others were pure energy, crackling and humming with power. All of them were watching the humans. Grace walked on David's right, her head held high. Mike walked on his left, his face calm and focused. They were 3 small, soft beings in a room full of ancient powers. But they did not show fear. Ambassador Thrix was already at the center platform. He had spent the past week preparing for this moment, speaking with other ambassadors, sharing what he had seen, trying to change minds that had been set for thousands of years. Now it was time to find out if he had succeeded. The Speaker of the Assembly was a being called the Eternal, a creature so old that no one knew its true name or origin. It appeared as a column of pale light that flickered and changed colors as it spoke. We are gathered to consider the application of the species known as humans, the Eternal said. Its voice echoed through the hall like distant thunder. "They seek to join our coalition. Ambassador Thrix of the Valari has requested permission to speak on their behalf." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Valari were one of the founding species. Their word carried great weight. But speaking for an unknown species was unusual. Thrix stepped forward. His shell gleamed under the artificial stars. "Honored members of the coalition," he began. "I stand before you today to admit that I was wrong." Silence fell over the hall. This was unexpected. When the humans first arrived, I dismissed them. I looked at their soft bodies and saw weakness. I looked at their short lifespans and saw failure. I laughed at them. Many of you have done the same. He paused, letting his words sink in. But then something happened. A human named David Park threw himself from a platform to save a Valari child he had never met. He knew he would be hurt. He knew his soft body could not survive the impact without damage. But he did it anyway. Thrix turned and gestured toward David. He was badly wounded. His flesh was torn. His blood, which they carry inside their bodies, unprotected, spilled onto our floor. I looked at him and was certain he would die. No creature survives such damage. This is a law of nature. He stepped closer to the assembly. But I was wrong. Over 3 days, I watched his body repair itself. His cells moved without guidance. His flesh grew back without machines. His wound closed through nothing but the power already inside him. He healed himself, completely, using nothing but time and his own biology. The murmurs grew louder. The glowing insects buzzed with confusion. A stone giant leaned forward in its seat, causing the floor to shake. "We Valari called humans fragile," Thrix continued. "We were wrong. They are not fragile, they are renewable. Every wound heals. Every scar makes them stronger. Every time they are broken, they rebuild themselves better than before." He raised all 4 of his hands in a gesture of emphasis. But that is not the most remarkable thing about humans. The most remarkable thing is why he jumped. He did not jump for reward. He did not jump for status. He did not jump because the child was valuable or important. He jumped because a living being needed help. That was enough. That was everything. Thrix turned to face the Eternal directly. "We have built this coalition on strength, on power, on the ability to survive and conquer. But we have forgotten something important. We have forgotten that the greatest strength is not the ability to destroy. It is the ability to endure, to heal, to continue when all hope seems lost." He pointed at David. "This human should be dead. By every measure we know, he should have died on our station floor. But he did not. He healed. He got up. He kept going. Because that is what humans do. They never stop. They never surrender. They never give up." The hall was silent now. Even the energy beings had stopped crackling. "Humans are not what they appear to be," Thrix said. "They are not prey animals who stumbled into space. They are survivors. The most successful survivors their planet has ever produced. They survived ice ages that killed stronger species. They survived diseases that should have ended them. They survived wars and disasters and catastrophes that would have broken any other civilization." His voice rose with passion. "And they did not just survive, they grew. They spread. They reached for the stars. With bodies that can be cut by a child's toy and bones that can be broken by a simple fall, they built spacecraft and traveled between worlds. They looked at a universe full of dangers and said, 'We will find a way.'" He turned back to the assembly. "That is why I believe humans deserve a place in our coalition. Not because they are strong in the ways we usually measure, but because they possess a strength that is rare and precious. The strength to keep going when everything says they should stop. The strength to heal. The strength to hope. the strength to care about others, even when it cost them everything. Thrix stepped back. His speech was finished. The Eternal flickered for a long moment. Then it spoke. The Assembly will now vote. Each species will cast their decision. One by one, the votes came in. The stone giants voted yes. They respected endurance. The liquid beings voted yes. They understood adaptation. The insect swarms voted yes. They valued cooperation. Species after species cast their vote. Some hesitated. Some discussed among themselves. But in the end, 16 of the 17 species voted to accept humanity. Only one vote remained, the vote of the Eternal itself. The column of light flickered and changed colors. When it spoke, its voice was gentle. Humans, the Eternal said, I have watched species rise and fall for longer than your planet has existed. I have seen empires built on strength crumble to dust. I have seen civilizations that seemed invincible disappear in a single generation. The light pulsed slowly, and I have learned that the species which survive are not always the strongest, or the fastest, or the smartest. They are the ones who can adapt, who can heal, who can come back from defeat and find new ways forward. The Eternal turned its attention directly to David. Human, I have one question for you. Your species can heal from almost anything. You can survive wounds that would kill others. But what happens when you can no longer heal? What happens when death finally claims you? David stepped forward. His heart was beating fast, but his voice was steady. Then another human picks up where we left off. The Eternal seemed to wait for more. That's what we do, David continued. We continue. Not as individuals, as a species. Our real healing factor isn't biological. It's generational. Every human who falls passes something forward. Knowledge, culture, hope, stories, love. He looked around at the assembled species, ancient beings who had lived for thousands of years. You measure strength in armor and weapons and lifespan. But we measure it differently. We measure it in what we leave behind, in the children we raise and the ideas we share and the dreams we pass on. A single human might live for only 80 years, but humanity has lived for millions. And we will keep living, keep growing, keep healing, keep dreaming for as long as there are stars to reach. He smiled. You can't kill an idea. And humanity? We're the most stubborn idea the universe ever produced. The hall was completely silent. The Eternal's light flickered rapidly, cycling through colors that had no names. Then, slowly, it spoke. I have lived for eons, and I have never heard an answer quite like that. The light settled into a warm, golden glow. The final vote is cast. Humanity is accepted into the coalition. Unanimous. Cheers erupted from the Volari section. Other species joined in, clicking, buzzing, rumbling, glowing. The sound filled the massive hall like a wave. Grace grabbed David's arm, tears streaming down her face. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. Mike was smiling, actually smiling for the first time since they had arrived. Yes, they finally realized what they were dealing with. Thrix approached them through the chaos. His shell was gleaming brighter than ever. Congratulations, Commander Park. Humanity has joined the stars. David shook his hand, both of them this time. Thank you, Ambassador, for seeing us. For really seeing us. Thrix made that sound that meant laughter, but it was different now. Warm. Friendly. Thank you for jumping. For bleeding. For healing. For showing us all that the smallest, softest creature in the room can also be the strongest. David looked up at the artificial stars above them. Somewhere out there, billions of humans were going about their lives, unaware that their future had just changed forever. They would learn soon enough. They would spread across the galaxy, bringing their stubborn hope and their incredible healing, and their determination to help anyone who needed it. The aliens had laughed at human skin. They would never laugh again, because now they knew the truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was unstoppable, and the universe would never be the same.